That dog isn't normal, the woman said, just before the agents took her away. Her gaze locked on Rex with a mixture of fear and reverence. It never has been. What had seemed like an ordinary day for an airport officer turned into the most dangerous and revealing operation of his life, all because his canine partner detected something no human or machine could perceive. What they discovered together would forever change the course of international security and the very relationship between science, morality, and loyalty. Before our story begins, subscribe to the channel and comment with where you're watching from. In the bustling concourse of the international airport, Officer Mark Daniels adjusted his uniform and checked his watch for the third time that morning. At his side, Rex, a 7-year-old German shepherd, watched the constant flow of passengers with intelligent, chestnut-brown eyes. The pair was marking 5 years of partnership that month, and their routine had become something as predictable as it was comfortable. "All right, boy. Time to start the rounds," Mark murmured, adjusting Rex's leash. The dog responded with a slight wag of his tail, already familiar with the daily ritual. They began in the East Terminal, where international flights arrived at regular intervals throughout the morning. The airport was a symphony of sounds, loudspeaker announcements, the wheels of suitcases gliding across the polished floor, and conversations in a dozen different languages. For Mark, this noise had become a kind of background music to his daily work. At 42, he valued the stability his position offered. No unpredictable or dangerous situations, just regular patrols, occasional baggage checks, and the reliable company of Rex. "Morning, Daniels!" Rodriguez, a colleague from the security team, greeted him as she passed. "All quiet in Sector C?" "As always," Mark replied with a casual nod. "Another day in paradise." That's how he described his job to friends and family. It wasn't glamorous or exciting like many imagined, but it was steady and satisfying. Unlike other officers who chased the adrenaline of major cases, Mark found pleasure in a well-executed routine, in the quiet professionalism that kept thousands of people safe every day without them ever noticing. Rex walked obediently by his side, his posture relaxed but alert. Years of training and experience allowed the dog to filter through the chaos of movements and smells without distraction. Their partnership had evolved into something almost telepathic. Mark could detect subtle shifts in Rex's behavior, while the dog responded to the slightest touch on the leash. They stopped near the Charlie checkpoint, observing passengers as they went through security. Mark checked the schedule on his tablet. Flight EA-227 from Frankfurt was due in 30 minutes, followed by connections from Paris, London, and Dubai. A typical Tuesday morning. "Officer Daniels," his supervisor called over the radio, "can you do a sweep of the international baggage claim?" Routine. "On our way," Mark responded, directing Rex toward the indicated area. As they walked down the wide corridor, Mark reflected on how much Rex had matured since arriving as an energetic 2-year-old recruit. Now, at 7, he was a consummate professional, focused, reliable, with just enough personality to make the partnership enjoyable without compromising his efficiency. In the baggage claim area, staff moved efficiently, preparing for the arrival of the Frankfurt flight. Mark positioned himself strategically in a corner, allowing Rex a clear view of the entire area. This was the most common part of their job: a visible presence, discreet surveillance, and intervention only when necessary. 15 more minutes and we'll head to Sector D, Mark commented, more to himself than to Rex. The dog maintained his attentive posture, his eyes tracking the movement of people and luggage like a silent radar. To any casual observer, they were just another element of the airport's daily routine, an officer and his service dog, dutifully carrying out their shift. No one could have imagined that in the coming hours, this ordinary pair would become the front line against a threat that no standard security protocol could ever detect. The first sign that this day would be different came when Rex suddenly tensed during their patrol near Gate C-42. Passengers from the Frankfurt flight were beginning to gather their luggage, and Mark immediately noticed the subtle shift in Rex's demeanor. The slight stiffening of his shoulders, the almost imperceptible forward tilt of his ears. After 5 years together, Mark could read these micro-expressions as clearly as if Rex were speaking to him. Something had captured the dog's attention, though Mark couldn't yet identify what it might be amidst the sea of travelers and suitcases. Mark had always prided himself on trusting Rex's instincts, even when they contradicted his own human perception. There had been countless occasions where Rex's keen sense of smell had detected contraband no human would have ever found. Drugs stitched into the lining of a teddy bear, wild animals hidden in hollowed-out books, or trace amounts of explosives masked by strong perfumes. But today felt different somehow. Rex wasn't giving his usual signal for contraband. Instead, there was an unusual intensity in his focus, an unease Mark had never witnessed before. As they continued their patrol, Mark tried to dismiss his growing disquiet, attributing it to simple paranoia. Perhaps he was projecting his own restlessness onto Rex. The last few months had become increasingly monotonous, and Mark had caught himself wondering if this was all his career would amount to. Endless circles around the same terminal, routine checks that rarely led to significant discoveries. At 42, he was beginning to question if he had made enough of an impact, if his work truly mattered in the grand scheme of things. This dissatisfaction grew like a shadow in his mind, though he never voiced it to anyone. "You see something, boy?" Mark murmured, watching the dog's behavior closely. Rex didn't respond to the sound of his voice as he normally would, his intense focus fixed in the direction of the baggage carousel. Rex's behavior became increasingly hard to ignore as they neared the baggage claim area. The dog's nostrils flared repeatedly, and his eyes scanned the environment with an unusual urgency. When Mark tried to guide him toward the next checkpoint, Rex resisted for the first time in years, pulling subtly against the leash in the direction of the conveyor belt, where the bags from the Frankfurt flight were beginning to appear. This is new, Mark thought, feeling an inexplicable shiver run down his spine. In 5 years, Rex had never disobeyed a direct command. Something was definitely wrong. Mark made a split-second decision, choosing to follow Rex's lead rather than forcing compliance. His curiosity piqued by this deviation from their well-established patterns. "All right, let's see what you're sensing," he murmured, allowing Rex to guide him closer to the carousel. The baggage claim was crowded with travelers eager to retrieve their bags and continue their journeys. Mark observed the usual mix of business people checking their watches impatiently, families wrangling excited children, and solo travelers keeping their distance from the crowd. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary to his human senses, but Rex's growing agitation suggested otherwise. "Easy, boy," Mark whispered, suddenly feeling self-conscious about his partner's unusual behavior. While there was technically nothing wrong with checking the luggage more closely, it was part of his job after all. He didn't want to create unnecessary panic among the passengers. Rex's focus narrowed as a set of black suitcases rounded the curve of the conveyor belt, and Mark felt a sudden, inexplicable certainty that whatever was causing Rex's unusual behavior was about to reveal itself. Baggage from flight EA-127 from Frankfurt is now on Carousel 3. a mechanical voice announced over the PA system, almost as if on cue. Mark found himself holding his breath as he watched Rex fixate on one specific black suitcase, no different from the dozens of others circling the belt. But to Rex, that suitcase was unique. The dog let out a low sound in his throat, something between a whine and a growl, a sound Mark had never heard before. The transition from routine patrol to a crisis situation happened in the blink of an eye. One moment, Rex was alerting with controlled precision. The next, he lunged with such force that Mark almost lost his grip on the leash. The German Shepherd's powerful jaws clamped down on the ordinary black suitcase as it passed on the conveyor belt, his growl deep and menacing in a way Mark had never heard. Around them, travelers recoiled in alarm, quickly creating an ever-widening circle of space as Rex refused to release his prize, despite Mark's commands. This wasn't the standard protocol for contraband detection. This was something else entirely. Something urgent. Mark's training took over instantly as he signaled to nearby security personnel, trying to maintain control of the situation. K-9 alert and baggage claim B. I need this area evacuated and supervisory assistance, now. His voice carried the authority needed to initiate emergency protocols without causing a panic, though he could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. Security officers quickly began to move travelers away from the conveyor belt while establishing a perimeter. Mark noticed his colleague, Rodriguez, already on her radio, likely calling in the bomb squad, as per protocol for an unidentified threat. Stay calm, ma'am. Please proceed to the exit in an orderly fashion, a nearby officer instructed an elderly woman who looked particularly shaken by the situation. Throughout the terminal, guards took up strategic positions, their professional expressions masking any personal anxiety they might feel. As the terminal emptied of civilians, the silence became almost palpable, punctuated only by Rex's continuous growl and the mechanical hum of the now stationary conveyor belt. Mark maintained a calm exterior for the benefit of his colleagues, but inwardly his mind raced through the possibilities. Rex wasn't displaying his trained response for explosives or narcotics. This was something different, something that had triggered a more primal, protective instinct in the dog. Whatever was in that suitcase, Rex perceived it as an immediate threat, not just contraband to be flagged. ETA on the EOD team? Mark asked Rodriguez, who approached cautiously, keeping a respectful distance from Rex. 3 minutes. We've evacuated this section and are rerouting arriving passengers to the north terminal. She hesitated, eyeing Rex with an appraising look. I've never seen him react like this before. What do you think it is? Mark shook his head slightly. I don't know. It's not the standard behavior for anything we've ever encountered. He crouched down slightly, speaking in a low, reassuring tone to Rex. Easy, boy. I get the message. We're handling it. The bomb squad arrived with remarkable efficiency, their heavy protective gear creating a surreal contrast to the normally relaxed atmosphere of the baggage claim area. Lieutenant Walsh approached Mark as her team set up equipment at a safe distance. What do we have, Daniels? She asked, her eyes already assessing Rex's behavior with professional interest. Mark shook his head slightly. Unknown threat. Rex has never reacted like this. It's not his standard alert for explosives or narcotics. Walsh nodded, understanding the implication. When a dog with Rex's experience and training exhibits unusual behavior, experienced handlers know better than to ignore it. We'll need you to move the dog back so we can examine the bag, Walsh instructed, as her team prepared a remote-controlled robot. Mark nodded but hesitated. I'm not sure he'll comply. I've never seen him this fixated on something. Try, Walsh replied simply. If it doesn't work, we'll have to work around him. Mark knelt beside Rex, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. Rex, release, he commanded, using both the verbal cue and the hand signal that would normally make the dog instantly drop any object. For the first time in years, Rex hesitated, his eyes flicking briefly to Mark before returning to the suitcase. After a second, firmer command, Rex finally let go of the bag. But he remained intensely focused, his body trembling slightly with the effort of holding himself back. As the bomb squad prepared to examine the suitcase with their remote equipment, Mark held his position with Rex. The airport had entered a full lockdown protocol, with flights diverted and an eerie silence descending upon what should have been one of the country's busiest terminals. Mark caught glimpses of armed security personnel taking up positions at strategic points throughout the area, their presence a stark reminder of the post-9/11 reality they operated in. Whatever was about to be revealed, they were prepared for the worst. The bomb squad's robot delivered the suitcase to the containment area, where Lieutenant Walsh and her team prepared to open it using remote tools. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife, as everyone present understood the potential dangers they faced. Mark remained at the designated safe distance with Rex held firmly at his side, though the dog continued to be unusually agitated, whining softly as if trying to communicate something urgent about the luggage's contents. The security cameras in the baggage sorting area were being reviewed simultaneously, a frantic search for the individual who had checked the suspicious suitcase. "We are commencing the opening procedure," Walsh announced over the radio. "All non-essential personnel maintain a safe distance." Mark watched the monitors intently, his eyes fixed on the feed from the robot's camera. The suitcase itself looked utterly ordinary, a medium-sized black roller bag, the kind thousands of travelers used every day. Nothing about its exterior suggested the danger Rex had so vehemently detected. The metallic click of the latch being manipulated by remote tools echoed through the now empty space. The lid of the suitcase lifted slowly, the camera adjusting its focus to reveal the contents. When the image sharpened, a collective gasp was audible from the security team. Instead of the explosives or bulk narcotics they had braced for, they found themselves staring at a tiny, trembling puppy. A golden retriever, no more than 8 weeks old, was swaddled in a thin fabric that had been soaked in some kind of chemical solution. The puppy's breathing was shallow, its minimal movements suggesting heavy sedation. "Get animal control in here now," Walsh ordered, his eyes never leaving the monitor. "And someone from veterinary services." Something about the scene felt deeply wrong to everyone present, transcending the already disturbing fact of animal smuggling. "My God," muttered Rodriguez, who had moved to stand beside Mark. "Who would do this to such a small creature?" Mark didn't answer. His attention was split between the monitor and Rex, who was now staring at the screen with an almost human intensity. For a disturbing moment, Mark had the impression that his partner understood exactly what they were seeing. Not just an animal in distress, but something far more sinister. As the animal specialists rushed to care for the puppy, the bomb squad continued their methodical examination of the suitcase's contents. Beneath the fabric that had cradled the puppy, they discovered a false bottom concealing vacuum-sealed packages of what appeared to be synthetic narcotics. Not common street drugs, but something more sophisticated, judging by their clinical packaging. Even more intriguing were the waterproof cases containing what a technician identified as cutting-edge biotechnology microchips, the kind used in advanced medical research rather than consumer electronics. "This isn't street-level smuggling," Walsh murmured to Mark, his expression grim. "This is something else entirely." The airport's head of security joined them as the full inventory was documented. The synthetic compounds would require lab analysis for a full identification, but preliminary tests indicated they could be experimental pharmaceutical precursors, the building blocks for designer drugs that had not yet hit the market or been classified by enforcement agencies. The microchips, meanwhile, held encrypted data that would require specialist decryption. Most disturbing of all was the realization that the puppy was not merely a distraction, but part of the smuggling methodology itself. Blood samples drawn by the veterinarian showed traces of the same compounds found in the packages, suggesting the animal was being used as both a living carrier and possibly a test subject. "Is the pup going to make it?" Mark asked the emergency vet who had arrived to treat the animal. "It's hard to say," the doctor replied, checking the puppy's vitals. "He's been exposed to compounds I don't recognize, but we're stabilizing him. The fact he's still alive is a good sign." As the vet transferred the puppy to a proper carrier, Mark noticed something odd. Rex, normally aloof with other dogs while on duty, was trying to get closer to the puppy. His demeanor was protective, not investigative. It was as if he recognized something in the smaller animal that the humans present could not perceive. As Mark watched the evidence being carefully logged and prepared for transport to various labs and agencies, a chilling realization settled over him. Rex hadn't been alerting to the drugs, or even primarily to the puppy. He had, somehow, sensed the totality of what they were facing, a threat that transcended standard categories. This wasn't just about smuggling, or even animal cruelty. The combination of experimental pharmaceuticals, advanced technology, and the use of a living creature pointed to something far more ominous. Organized biotechnology trafficking, with potential implications for public health and national security. What had begun as a routine day had plunged them into waters deeper and darker than anything in their previous experience. The security footage finally yielded a crucial lead. A woman in her late 30s with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a plain business suit that would blend seamlessly into any corporate environment. The cameras captured her approaching the check-in counter with the black suitcase, then abandoning it and exiting the airport briskly just minutes before Rex's alert. The tactical team identified her from the footage as Lena Voss, a German national with a spotless record. No criminal history, no watch list alerts, nothing that would have triggered enhanced screening. Her perfect anonymity now seemed her most suspicious attribute. "Amazing how the most dangerous people often look the most normal," Rodriguez commented, studying the frozen image on the monitor. "She looks like she could be an accountant or a marketing manager." The airport authority director, Chambers, pulled Mark aside as various agencies began coordinating their response to the discovery. "We need to find her immediately," he said, his typically composed demeanor showing cracks of genuine alarm. "Homeland Security and the CDC are classifying this as a priority national security concern based on the preliminary lab findings." He explained that the compounds in the suitcase appeared to be precursors for experimental bioweapons, not immediately dangerous in their current form, but potentially catastrophic if combined with the right catalysts. "We need Rex to track her from any scent markers we have. She left a scarf at the security checkpoint that might work." "You're asking me to leave my jurisdiction?" Mark asked, surprised. In 5 years, he and Rex had never been deployed outside the airport perimeter. Chambers exchanged a look with a tall man in a discreet suit, whom Mark didn't initially recognize. "This is Agent Reyes from Homeland Security. He'll be accompanying you. There's a tactical team ready to move in once you locate her. Your job is just to track, not to engage." Agent Reyes extended a hand to Mark. "I've heard a lot about you and your partner, Officer Daniels. What Rex did today may have prevented something catastrophic. We're dealing with what looks like a new class of biological warfare agent, something designed for targeted neurological manipulation. For the first time in their partnership, Mark and Rex were being deployed beyond the controlled environment of the airport. The transition was jarring, from the familiar contained world of terminals and checkpoints to the chaotic urban landscape of the city center, where Voss had last been seen heading. Rex took the scent from the discarded scarf with focused determination, pulling Mark through bustling streets with an uncharacteristic urgency. Mark felt simultaneously exhilarated and disoriented. This was what he had once imagined his work with Rex would be, before settling into the comfortable routine of airport security. But he found himself acutely aware of his tactical skills, rusty in this unfamiliar context. "Is he always this intense?" Reyes asked, keeping pace beside them as a discreet tactical team followed at a distance in unmarked vehicles. "I've never seen him like this," Mark replied, watching Rex with a mixture of pride and concern. The dog moved with a singular purpose, ignoring distractions that would normally command at least a moment of his attention. Other dogs, people trying to pet him, even a dropped hamburger that would have been irresistible on any other day. It's like he understands what's at stake. The trail led them to a boutique hotel in the city's financial district, where Rex's behavior indicated Voss had recently been present. Mark coordinated with the tactical team, who had been following at a discreet distance, establishing a perimeter while they confirmed if the suspect was still in the building. The hotel security cooperated immediately upon seeing their credentials, providing access to surveillance feeds and keycard logs. Voss had checked in 2 hours prior, but had not yet returned to her room, suggesting she might be meeting contacts elsewhere in or near the hotel. She booked a private conference room for 4 p.m., the hotel security manager reported, consulting his system. "It's scheduled for the next 90 minutes, under the name Helix Pharmaceuticals." Reyes immediately made a call, speaking in low, urgent tones. When he hung up, his face was even more grim. Helix is a German firm specializing in neurological treatments. It was recently acquired by a larger Chinese conglomerate. This raises the concern level considerably. While they waited for visual confirmation of Voss's location, Mark received a disturbing update from the lab analyzing the compounds. The synthetic narcotics found in the suitcase contained markers indicating they were engineered for targeted neurological effects. Not for recreational use, but for potentially weaponizing cognitive functions. Even more troubling, the genetic material extracted from the puppy's blood samples showed evidence of manipulation that shouldn't be possible with current publicly known technology. Whatever operation they had stumbled upon, it was becoming increasingly clear that it represented a significant leap beyond conventional bioweapon research. The realization settled like a lead weight on Mark's shoulders. What had started as Rex's unusual reaction to a suitcase had exploded into a case with implications far beyond anything he could have imagined during his morning patrol. The breakthrough came when hotel security identified Voss entering a private dining room reserved under a corporate account belonging to Helix Pharmaceuticals. Mark coordinated with the tactical team leader and Agent Reyes to establish surveillance on the room without alerting the occupants. Through discreet observation, they confirmed Voss was meeting with 3 men, whose identities were quickly run through federal databases. 2 were identified as executives from competing pharmaceutical companies, while the third remained unidentified, but appeared to be in a position of authority based on the group's body language. "Are we looking at a business meeting or a conspiracy?" Mark muttered, watching the monitor that displayed the feed from a hastily installed security camera. "In my experience, it's sometimes hard to tell the two apart," Reyes replied dryly. especially when it comes to experimental biotech. As the surveillance continued, forensic technicians back at the airport made another critical discovery. The microchips found in the suitcase contained encrypted research data related to genetic modification techniques, specifically targeting the blood-brain barrier. In essence, they detailed methods for creating delivery mechanisms that could bypass the body's natural defenses against foreign substances, directly targeting the brain. When this information reached Mark through his secure comms link, the implications became chilling. The puppy hadn't just been a smuggling tool, but a live test subject for technology that could potentially be weaponized for mass cognitive manipulation or even mind control. We're dealing with people who see living things as disposable tools, the bioterrorism specialist who had joined the team remotely said. The puppy is likely not the first test organism they've used. It's just the first one we've intercepted. With the stakes escalating by the minute, the decision was made to move in and apprehend all parties in the hotel meeting. The operation was planned with precision, multiple entry points, non-lethal containment protocols, and careful coordination to ensure no civilians were endangered. Mark and Rex were positioned to cut off potential escape through a service corridor, a role that kept them involved while acknowledging their limited tactical experience compared to the specialized Homeland Security team. As the agents breached the private dining room, the initial phase went exactly as planned. Two of the men were apprehended immediately, offering no resistance. "Operation is a go," Reyes's voice crackled in Mark's earpiece. "Targets Alpha and Bravo contained. Charlie and Delta are on the move. Positions, be ready." Mark felt the adrenaline surge through his system as he gave Rex's leash a slight tug, a signal for the dog to be on high alert. They had trained for similar scenarios, but always in the controlled environment of the airport, never in a live situation with potentially dangerous suspects. However, in the chaos of the raid, both Voss and the unidentified authority figure managed to break for the service corridor where Mark and Rex were stationed. The narrow hallway erupted into a frantic chase, with Rex leading the pursuit with singular determination. Mark was stunned at the transformation in his partner. Gone was the methodical security dog, replaced by a primordial hunter, fixated on its prey with an intensity that bordered on ferocious. They cornered the unidentified man quickly, but Voss demonstrated an unexpected physical capability, vaulting over a maintenance cart and disappearing through an emergency exit that triggered a building-wide alarm system, temporarily disorienting the pursuit team. "Suspect is on the move. East corridor, 3rd floor," Mark reported as he held the captured man. "Requesting immediate backup. Rex is on the scent, but I've lost visual on the suspect." The captured man, later identified as Helix's chief scientist, watched Rex with a strangely contemplative expression, as if professionally appraising the dog. "Extraordinary," he murmured in a soft German accent. "He shouldn't be able to detect the compounds at this stage unless—" "Quiet," Mark ordered, handing the suspect over to arriving agents before following Rex's lead. The dog was pulling insistently in the direction Voss had fled. Though Voss herself had escaped, the operation could hardly be considered a failure. The captured suspects provided immediate intelligence value, and documents seized during the raid revealed a network far more extensive than initially suspected. It was a consortium of renegade scientists and corporate interests, collaborating on biotechnology that crossed ethical and legal boundaries on multiple fronts. Most significantly, they recovered a laptop containing communications that referenced additional planned shipments through different airports across the country, suggesting that what Rex had uncovered was merely a single thread in a vast web of illegal biotech smuggling and experimentation. As Mark reviewed these findings with the Joint Agency Task Force now forming around the case, he realized he and Rex had stumbled onto something that would likely reshape their careers forever. "We need to find her," Agent Race said, watching hotel security footage that showed Vaz disappearing into an unidentified vehicle. "She's just one link in the chain, but an important one, especially if she's carrying active samples of the compounds." "Rex can find her," Mark said, with a confidence that surprised even himself. "If she's still in the region with those samples, he'll track her." Something about his partner's singular determination throughout this extraordinary case had solidified a certainty in Mark. They had started something they now had to finish, no matter where it led them. After 18 grueling hours, the interrogation of the captured suspect yielded critical information. The man was Dr. Anton Mercer, a brilliant neurobiologist presumed dead for 3 years, following a controversial research ethics investigation. His apparent resurrection and connection to the smuggling operation sent shockwaves through the scientific community and federal agencies. More importantly, he eventually revealed the location of the main research facility, a compound disguised as an agricultural research center 30 miles outside the city, nestled in the dense forest that provided both natural camouflage and isolation from prying eyes. "You don't understand what you're interrupting," Mercer said during his interrogation, his tone less that of a captured criminal and more of a disappointed professor. "We are on the verge of a revolution in neuroscience. What you call a weapon is, in fact, the key to the next stage of human evolution." What made the facility particularly dangerous, according to Dr. Mercer's reluctant testimony, was the advanced state of their research. The compounds found in the airport suitcase represented only the transport phase of the operation. At the facility itself, they had allegedly managed to create fully functional neurological agents, capable of altering specific brain functions without detection. These agents could theoretically be deployed through municipal water supplies or ventilation systems at targeted locations, creating effects ranging from heightened suggestibility to complete behavioral modification in an exposed population. The implications for national security, public health, and even the fundamental concept of free will were staggering. "He truly believes he's doing something beneficial," commented the forensic psychologist assigned to evaluate Mercer. "That's what makes people like him so dangerous." In his mind, the puppy and any other test subjects were necessary sacrifices for a greater good. The Joint Task Force prepared for a carefully coordinated raid on the facility, but faced a unique challenge. The compounds they were looking for could be disguised or hidden in ways that conventional detection equipment would miss. This was where Rex became invaluable once more. Having demonstrated an uncanny ability to detect these specific biochemical signatures at the airport, he represented their best hope of identifying hidden labs or storage areas within the complex. Mark was initially hesitant when Agent Race requested their participation. This level of high-risk tactical operation was far outside his usual jurisdiction, but the stakes were too high to refuse. "I'm not asking you to lead the assault, Daniels," Race explained as they reviewed the plans. "We need Rex's unique skills to find what we're looking for once we're inside. You and he will be flanked by full tactical operators the entire time." Mark spent a tense day preparing Rex for the operation, running him through specialized training exercises designed to simulate the facility's environment while reinforcing his detection skills. Working with chemical analysts, they exposed Rex to diluted samples of the recovered compounds, strengthening his ability to identify those specific scents, even when masked by other chemicals. During these preparations, Mark noticed a subtle shift in Rex's behavior, a new intensity and purpose that transcended his previous work. It was as if the dog somehow understood the gravity of what they were facing, though Mark knew that was likely just his own anxiety projected onto his partner. "It's as if he were made for this," one of the biochemists remarked, watching Rex accurately pinpoint increasingly diluted samples during the training. His sensitivity to these compounds is remarkable, even for a trained detection dog. The night before the raid, Mark couldn't sleep, his mind cycling through all the ways the operation could go wrong. He sat beside Rex's bed in their temporary quarters at the Homeland Security Field Office, running his fingers through the dog's fur as he had countless times during their partnership. "We're a long way from baggage claim, aren't we, boy?" he murmured, trying to reconcile the routine life they led only days ago with the high-stakes operation they now faced. Rex responded with a low whine and rested his head on Mark's knee, a gesture of solidarity that communicated more clearly than words ever could that whatever came next, they would face it together, just as they had faced everything else. In the morning, the task force gathered for a final briefing. Maps of the facility, obtained through aerial surveillance and municipal blueprints, were studied meticulously. Entry and exit points were memorized, and responsibilities were assigned. Mark and Rex were officially designated for the second entry team, slated to move in once the perimeter was secure. "We have reason to believe Vaz may be at this facility," Race informed the group. "Our intelligence indicates there's been significant movement on the property in the last 12 hours, consistent with a possible evacuation or destruction of evidence. We need to move fast." As the agents made their final equipment checks, Mark noticed how different Rex seemed. Not anxious or stressed, as one might expect, but focused and deliberate in a way he had rarely seen before. The dog sat patiently as he was fitted with his own protective gear, specialized boots to protect his paws from chemical hazards, and a lightweight vest designed to offer some protection without compromising his mobility. "Ready for this, partner?" Mark asked softly, adjusting his own ballistic vest. Rex looked up at him with eyes that seemed to understand exactly what was at stake. And for the first time since this whole situation began, Mark felt an unqualified certainty that whatever they found in that facility, he and Rex were exactly where they were supposed to be, doing exactly what they were meant to do. Dawn broke over the Tactical Operations Center, established 2 miles from the target facility, where dozens of agents from multiple agencies made final preparations. Mark and Rex were with the second entry team, tasked with deploying once the perimeter was secured to search for hidden labs and storage areas. Mark felt a strange calm as he donned the tactical gear he'd been issued: body armor, a communications headset, and specialized equipment designed to protect them both from potential chemical exposure. The weight of the gear was unfamiliar after years in a standard security uniform, but the sense of purpose it brought was clarifying. Rex, fitted with his own protective boots and lightweight vest, stood alert beside him, seemingly unperturbed by the unusual equipment or circumstances. "Final comms check," the tactical team leader announced. "All units report, one by one." The leaders of the various teams confirmed their readiness. When it was Mark's turn, he simply said, "K-9 unit is ready." The word sounded foreign in his own ears. After years of relative routine at the airport, he was now about to take part in a high-risk tactical operation with implications for national security. The operation began with precision at 0600 hours, the first team breaching the main entrance while simultaneously disabling the facility's communication and security systems. Mark listened to the operation unfold through his earpiece, his hand resting reassuringly on Rex's back as they waited in the transport vehicle for their signal. Initial reports were promising. Minimal resistance encountered, several researchers detained without incident, and the perimeter secured in 12 minutes. When the team leader gave the signal, Mark and Rex moved quickly toward the main facility building, a deceptively ordinary-looking structure that could have easily passed for a legitimate agricultural research center. "Keep the channel open and stay close to Operator Johnson," Race instructed, referring to the fully equipped tactical agent assigned to flank them. "Your only priority is to identify any materials Rex flags. Leave the rest to the tactical team." Inside, the facade of normalcy quickly gave way to something far more disturbing. The main laboratories contained standard equipment that aligned with the facility's cover story, but Rex immediately began exhibiting alert behavior, pulling Mark toward what appeared to be a solid wall at the rear of the main greenhouse. Trusting his partner's instincts implicitly, Mark signaled the tactical team, who quickly identified a hidden entrance leading to a subterranean level not shown on any of the official facility blueprints. As they descended into this hidden domain, the temperature dropped noticeably, and the sterile smell of hospital-grade disinfectant filled the air, a stark contrast to the earthy sense of the agricultural operation above. "My God," Johnson whispered beside Mark. "They built an entire complex right under our noses." What they discovered in the subterranean lab exceeded even their worst expectations. Beyond the sophisticated equipment and stockpiles of compounds similar to those found in the airport suitcase, they found rows of cages containing dozens of animals, primarily young canines and primates, clearly being used as test subjects. Many showed signs of neurological distress or unnatural behavioral patterns, confirming the horrifying reality of the operation. Rex became visibly agitated at the sight of these other animals, a reaction so profound that Mark momentarily feared he might break his carefully maintained training discipline. Instead, the dog channeled that response into an even more determined search effort, leading the team through a labyrinthine series of chambers to the facility's core. A sealed room containing computer servers and what appeared to be the central research database. "This is beyond anything I've ever seen," commented one of the bioterrorism specialists who had joined the team, examining the data on the computer monitors. They were manipulating brain chemistry in a way that should be theoretically impossible at this stage. Animal rescue specialists immediately began assessing the animals, while specialized agents carefully documented the conditions. Mark watched as a veterinary technician approached a young German shepherd exhibiting particularly distressed behavior in one of the cages. The dog, no more than a year old, moved erratically, its eyes reflecting a disconcerting intelligence mixed with obvious agony. "The genetic similarities are remarkable," the technician murmured, comparing data from a nearby screen to the animal in the cage. They were clearly using this specimen as a template for some kind of... The sentence was cut short as Rex began barking urgently, pulling Mark toward a different door they had initially overlooked. When the tactical team breached it, they were met by an even more sophisticated laboratory, containing what appeared to be a small-scale production facility, clearly designed to manufacture the neurological compounds in larger quantities for distribution. The raid yielded far more than the task force had ever anticipated. Not just physical evidence of illegal biotech experimentation and animal cruelty, but comprehensive digital records detailing the entire operation. The servers contained research data, communication logs, financial transactions, and, most crucially, a list of the individuals and organizations involved in funding and directing the project. It was a list that included names that sent shockwaves through the highest levels of government and industry. Prominent business leaders, researchers from prestigious institutions, and, most disturbingly, several individuals with connections to foreign intelligence services. As the evidence was carefully documented, and prepared for transport. Mark watched Rex receive well-deserved praise from seasoned federal agents. The airport security dog was now viewed with a newfound respect. What had begun with Rex's inexplicable reaction to a single suitcase had unraveled a conspiracy, one with implications that would likely reverberate through scientific, corporate, and geopolitical circles for years to come. The euphoria of the successful raid, however, quickly gave way to a grim reality. "There's just one problem," Agent Race mentioned as they swept through the complex a second time. "No sign of Lena Vaz, and according to these logs, she left with samples of the most advanced compound just 2 hours before we arrived." Mark and Rex looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. Their mission wasn't over. They had found the factory, but its most dangerous product was now in the wind, a threat that only Rex seemed uniquely qualified to track. The task force confirmed their worst fear. Lena Voss was gone. The timing of her departure suggested a security leak somewhere within their own ranks, though that would be an investigation for another time. What mattered now was finding Voss before she could hand her materials to the next link in the shadowy chain, potentially allowing the entire operation to resurrect itself elsewhere with minimal delay. The Joint Agency commanders convened for an emergency strategy session. The discussion focused on conventional manhunt tactics. "She's probably crossed state lines by now," one agent argued. "We should alert every airport, train station, and border crossing with her description." "What if she has a fake passport?" another countered. "We need to track financial records, cell phone pings, anything that can give us a lead." Mark listened in silence, a growing certainty that these approaches, while necessary, would be insufficient. Their adversary had already demonstrated remarkable foresight and adaptability. When a lull fell over the room, he cleared his throat and spoke, his voice firm despite his discomfort in addressing the room of senior officials. "Voss isn't just carrying research data. She has physical samples of the compounds," he said. "Rex can detect those compounds in concentrations far below what any mechanical sensor can register. If she's still in the region, he can find her." A wave of skepticism met his proposal. Deploying critical resources based on a dog's sense of smell seemed like a desperate gamble compared to sophisticated surveillance technology. But Agent Race, who had witnessed Rex's extraordinary performance firsthand, supported Mark's assessment. "The compounds have a unique biochemical signature, one our standard detection methods aren't calibrated for," she explained. "Rex has shown a consistent ability to identify them, even when they're deliberately masked. If Voss is carrying samples, as we believe, he represents our best chance of tracking her in the field." After a tense deliberation, the task force authorized a specialized search operation with Rex as its centerpiece. The logistics were challenging. How could they leverage the remarkable, yet limited range, abilities of a single dog in a search that could potentially span hundreds of square miles? The solution came through a creative integration of technology with Rex's unique abilities. Helicopter surveillance identified potential hideouts within a 50-mile radius of the facility. Abandoned buildings, remote cabins, motels where rooms were registered under names flagged from Voss's communications. These locations became the focus of targeted sweeps, with Rex being rapidly transported between them to conduct scent examinations. They were essentially creating a search grid with Rex as their mobile sensor. "If she's using any of these spots as a foothold," the tactical coordinator explained, "we'll find her." For 3 exhaustive days, Mark and Rex worked without a pause, catching brief periods of rest during transport between search sites. The toll of the relentless search was visible on them both. The strain etched new lines onto Mark's face, and while Rex's boundless energy had finally found its limit, his focus never wavered. On the afternoon of the third day, at a seemingly ordinary storage facility on the outskirts of a small town 20 miles from the research complex, Rex's behavior suddenly changed. The casual vigilance he'd maintained through dozens of previous searches transformed into the intense focus Mark recognized from the airport. Without any formal command, Rex pulled urgently toward a specific unit, his entire body vibrating with a certainty that was almost tangible. "We have a positive alert," Mark reported into his radio, keeping his voice low despite the adrenaline surging through him. "Unit 17. Rex is locked on, requesting immediate tactical support." The tactical team moved into position John with practiced efficiency as Mark held Rex at a safe distance. When they breached the storage unit, they found it empty of human life but containing clear evidence of recent occupation. Food wrappers, a makeshift sleeping area, and most significantly, a laptop connected to a small refrigeration unit designed for transporting biological samples. The laptop was still warm, its screen showing an interrupted file transfer, suggesting Vaz had been there mere minutes before their arrival. More troubling was the refrigeration unit, which was now empty. Rex's agitation grew as he processed the concentrated scent signatures in the enclosed space. Mark recognized they had just entered the most dangerous phase of the hunt. They were close enough now that Vaz likely knew she was being pursued, making her both cornered and more dangerous than ever. "She can't have gotten far on foot," Race observed, scanning the area. "And according to the complex security, no vehicles have entered or left in the last 30 minutes. "She's still here," Mark agreed, watching Rex, whose behavior indicated the trail remained strong somewhere nearby. As the tactical team expanded their search to the neighboring storage units, they discovered something even more alarming: a small, improvised workstation where Vaz had apparently transferred the compounds into an aerosol dispersal device. She had turned an experimental agent into a weapon ready for use. The device itself was gone, presumably taken by Vaz in her flight. "This has just become an active threat situation," the task force commander declared, his face grim. "She has a delivery mechanism now, not just samples. If she releases those compounds in a public space—" Mark watched Rex, who continued to pull in a specific direction, ignoring the forensic technicians now swarming the storage unit. "He's still on the trail," Mark said, a sense of certainty rising in him. "He can still find her." Race looked from Mark to the commander, then made a decision. "We follow the dog. Now." She keyed her radio, quickly organizing teams to follow Rex's lead, while others continued to secure the area. As Mark and Rex took the lead, the familiar path of their duty at the airport seemed a world away. The routine contraband-sniffing dog and his handler had become the fulcrum of a high-priority national security operation, chasing someone with the ability to cause damage on an unimaginable scale. And yet, as Rex pulled forward with unwavering purpose, Mark felt a strange sense that this was exactly what they had been training for all along, without ever knowing it. Rex's determination proved implacable. He led Mark and a small tactical unit away from the storage facility, following a scent trail that grew fresher with every step. The path suggested Vaz was on foot, likely having abandoned her vehicle to evade license plate recognition systems. The trail took them into an industrial area dominated by shuttered factories, casualties of economic shifts that had left the once thriving manufacturing zone largely abandoned. Rex's pace quickened, his body language communicating an unmistakable certainty that they were closing the distance to their target. When he finally stopped, trembling with tension before a dilapidated building, bearing the faded logo of a defunct pharmaceutical company. The symbolism was lost on no one. Nordica Pharma, one of the agents muttered, closed 8 years ago when they were bought out by Helix. It fits. Thermal imaging from a surveillance drone confirmed movement inside. Multiple heat signatures suggested Vaz was not alone. This aligned with intel from the recovered laptop, which indicated she was coordinating a handover to international buyers, likely representatives of a foreign bioweapons program. The full tactical response team was still 15 minutes out, mobilizing with the specialized equipment needed for potential biochemical hazards. Agent Race faced a critical decision: wait for full reinforcement, potentially allowing the exchange to happen, or move in with the limited personnel they had. After a tense radio exchange with her superiors, she made the call. They would establish a perimeter and gather intelligence, but they would not engage until backup arrived. Cover all points of entry, but maintain your distance, she ordered. We don't know what kind of sensors they might have. The plan dissolved minutes later when Rex suddenly went rigid, his attention fixed on a previously unnoticed side entrance. Thermal imaging now showed a heat signature approaching it from within. Someone was preparing to exit the building. With no time to consult the team, Mark made a split-second decision, maneuvering himself and Rex into a concealed position near the exit. His plan was simply to observe and report, but when the door creaked open to reveal Lena Vaz herself, clutching a specialized transport case and scanning the surroundings with palpable anxiety, the dynamic changed instantly. What followed unfolded with the chaotic intensity that no training scenario could ever fully replicate. Vaz spotted them and immediately recoiled back inside, shouting a warning. Mark relayed their situation to Race over the radio as he gave chase with Rex, knowing that allowing Vaz to regroup with her associates would likely lead to a hostage situation or the destruction of evidence. As they burst into the building, the familiar industrial layout gave way to a hastily established laboratory in what was once the facility's quality control department. 3 men in protective gear surrounded a portable containment unit, their attention now torn between their work and the sudden intrusion. "Internal security! Freeze!" Mark yelled, his service weapon drawn as Rex held a perfect heel, a low, controlled growl rumbling in his chest. "Hands where I can see them." The ensuing standoff stretched Mark's training to its limits. He held the room's occupants at gunpoint, while Rex responded perfectly to his subtle commands. As backup raced to their position, Vaz began a strange psychological gambit, explaining in unnervingly calm tones that the compounds they developed weren't weapons, but the future of cognitive enhancement, a future governments lacked the vision to understand. "Your dog sensed something special in our work," she said to Mark, her eyes flitting between him and Rex. "More special than you realize. He didn't just detect the compounds. He responded to them. Ask yourself why." The implication hung in the air, a disturbing suggestion that Rex's extraordinary abilities might not be entirely natural, that previous generations of her research might have already found their way into the world. "I'm not interested in your theories," Mark replied firmly, keeping his aim steady as he heard the sound of tactical boots approaching down the hall. "Put the case on the floor, now." Vaz smiled faintly, a gesture that didn't reach her eyes. "The compounds aren't weapons, Officer Daniels. They are keys. Keys to unlocking the next stage of evolution for select species. Your partner is living proof." Before Mark could process her words, one of the men suddenly threw a small object to the floor. It wasn't a weapon, but it immediately began to emit a dense mist. On instinct, Mark pulled his protective mask over his face, a precaution the biocontainment team had insisted he wear. But his heart sank at the thought of Rex being exposed. Tactical, possible bioagent release, he yelled into his radio, simultaneously trying to keep the suspects covered and check on his partner. To his astonishment, Rex seemed completely unaffected by the gas. He maintained his vigilant posture, showing no signs of distress. The chaos that followed ended swiftly with the arrival of the full tactical team, who secured the room with swift precision. With Voz and his associates subdued, the briefcase holding its precious and dangerous samples was seized intact. As the air cleared and technicians in full hazmat gear declared the area secure, Mark finally lowered his weapon, his pulse still hammering with adrenaline. He should have been affected, one of the techs said, examining Rex with obvious astonishment. That was one of the neurological compounds, non-lethal, but it should have caused at least temporary disorientation in mammals. It's as if he's immune. Mark glanced at his partner, the memory of Voz's cryptic words about Rex's unique response echoing in his mind. As the suspects were escorted away and the case of nerve agents was carefully packed for transport, a feeling began to grow in Mark. A sense that there was far more to this story than had been revealed. The connection between Rex and the compounds he so precisely detected felt like more than a coincidence. There was something deeper, something he was only just beginning to glimpse. The tactical team secured the makeshift lab with practiced efficiency. While Voz was led away in handcuffs, his final gaze at Rex held an unsettling mixture of scientific curiosity and something that bordered on recognition, as if they shared a secret unknown to anyone else. Mark dismissed the man's enigmatic comments as psychological tactics, focusing instead on getting Rex checked by the on-site veterinary specialist for any potential exposure. The dog appeared perfectly healthy, his demeanor returning to normal once the suspects were gone. But Mark couldn't quite shake the unease Voz's words had planted. He needs more tests, the vet insisted, looking over the preliminary results on her tablet. The way he resisted the effects of that agent isn't normal. Any other K-9 would have shown at least mild symptoms. In the days that followed, Mark and Rex were temporarily stationed at the Joint Agency Command Center, a hub of activity established to process the mountain of intelligence gathered from the operation. The investigation expanded exponentially, with threads connecting to pharmaceutical corporations, research institutions, and even government contractors. Mark observed the process from a unique vantage point, still involved due to Rex's vital role as the only reliable detector for the specific compounds, yet somewhat removed from the high-level analysis that now dominated the operation. "I noticed something odd in the vet reports," a forensic specialist commented, approaching the desk where Mark was reviewing documents. "Your partner has genetic markers that shouldn't be there. It's almost as if—" The breakthrough came during a routine briefing, when a junior analyst connected code names in the research facility's funding documents to a classified military program initiated 15 years prior. The program, designated Project K-9 Enhanced Cognitive Function, had been officially terminated after initial trials showed limited success, but the evidence now suggested that instead of ending, the project had simply gone dark, continuing under private funding with many of the same researchers, now operating without government oversight. Its original goal, to create working dogs with enhanced sensory and cognitive functions for military applications, had evolved into something far more ambitious and disturbing. "Are you saying Rex could be a product of this program?" Mark asked the analyst, a knot of discomfort tightening in his gut at the thought of his partner being referred to as a product. "Not directly," the analyst explained. "But look at these genetic marker sequences. They're present in Rex's DNA, from the tests run after the exposure. They're a perfect match for the markers being developed in the original program. Mark requested access to the classified files. The process required exceptional clearance, but was granted due to Rex's central role in the case. What he discovered sent a chill through him. The program had developed compounds designed to enhance specific regions of the K-9 brain, particularly those governing scent detection and pattern recognition. More significantly, it had established breeding lines specifically selected for genetic receptivity to these enhancements. The documentation included photographs of the original test subjects, and among them, unmistakably, was a German shepherd with the same distinctive white patch on its chest that Rex had borne since birth. "It's no coincidence, is it?" Mark asked the lead scientist now assigned to the case. Rex being assigned to airport security, where these exact compounds were being smuggled. The scientist shook his head slowly. "We're investigating that possibility. It appears someone with knowledge of both the original program and the current smuggling operation may have deliberately placed descendants of the original test subjects in positions where they could intercept the materials, a biological insurance policy, so to speak." The implications cascaded through Mark's mind like falling dominoes. Rex wasn't just any police dog who happened to detect something unusual. He was biologically tied to the very program that spawned the illegal research they were investigating. His extraordinary abilities weren't a fluke. They were the result of inherited genetic modifications, designed to respond to the exact class of compounds being smuggled. It explained everything. As Mark absorbed this revelation, his 5-year relationship with his partner was suddenly cast in an entirely new light, fraught with complexities he had never imagined. "So, what is he? Genetically modified?" Mark finally asked, his voice quieter than he intended. "Not exactly," the scientist replied. "He wasn't directly altered. He inherited specific genetic traits that were selected for and reinforced through targeted breeding. Think of it as an accelerated, more focused version of how humans have bred different dogs for specific skills over centuries. The difference is, the scientists knew exactly which genes to look for." That night, alone in their temporary quarters, with Rex sleeping peacefully on the rug beside the bed, Mark contemplated all he had learned. His trusted partner, the dog he'd thought of as perfectly normal, carried a secret genetic legacy. And yet, watching Rex now, the slight twitch of his paws as he dreamed, the familiar rise and fall of his chest, Mark could see nothing but the same loyal companion who had been by his side for 5 years. Whatever the extraordinary circumstances of his lineage, Rex was still Rex, brave, loyal, and devoted to his work and his partner. In the aftermath of the operation, Mark found himself at a crossroads. The task force was being formalized into a permanent unit focused on biotech security threats, and Agent Reyes had offered Mark and Rex federal positions, a world away from their airport security role. It was a tempting offer. Greater clearance, more resources, and work that acknowledged Rex's extraordinary capabilities. Yet Mark hesitated, spending long nights in their temporary lodging, watching Rex sleep and contemplating their future. "They really want you to," remarked Rodriguez, who had been assigned to help with personnel transitions. "It's not every day an airport security dog brings down an international bioweapons conspiracy." Mark managed a faint smile, scratching Rex's ears. "It's more than that. They want him for what he is, what he can do. I'm not sure that's what's best for him." Rodriguez shrugged. "He seems like the same dog to me. A little cockier, maybe, she grinned as Rex tilted his head as if following the conversation. The question is, where can you make the most difference? The decision crystallized during a briefing where intelligence analysts presented their assessment of ongoing threats. Their conclusion was sober. The network they had dismantled was just one facet of a much larger landscape of illegal biotech research. And much of it was likely moving through transportation hubs, precisely because conventional security measures weren't calibrated to detect it. As Mark listened, he realized that their seemingly ordinary post at the airport wasn't a backwater assignment at all, but potentially the front line of an emerging security domain that few others were equipped to handle. "What are you thinking, Daniels?" Reyes asked, noticing his pensive expression. "Still considering our offer?" "Actually," Mark replied, a decision finally taking root, "I'm thinking we might be more effective right where we were, with a few modifications." Mark requested a private meeting with the task force leadership, where he laid out his proposal. He and Rex would return to their airport security role, but with an expanded mandate. They would serve as a specialized detection unit, focused specifically on identifying potential biotech smuggling, with direct communication channels to the new federal task force. The arrangement would leverage their unique capabilities while maintaining their operational independence, allowing them to continue the work they had proven so effective at, without being absorbed into a larger bureaucracy where Rex's talents might be diluted. "Are you sure about this?" Reyes asked. "You could be leading your own team here. Full resources, top-level clearance." "We're making a difference where we are," Mark answered, surprised by his own conviction. "The airport is where these things are entering the country. It's where Rex detected the first sample. It's where we need to be." On their first day back, the airport seemed unchanged. The same crowded terminals, the same rhythmic pattern of arrivals and departures. And yet, for Mark, everything felt fundamentally different. He watched his partner move with the same professional focus he always had. But now he recognized the extraordinary confluence of factors, some natural, some engineered, that made Rex uniquely suited for this role, at this particular moment in history. The revelation of Rex's origins hadn't diminished their partnership. If anything, it had deepened Mark's appreciation for the dog's innate dignity and purpose. "Welcome back," Chambers greeted them, now fully aware of the true value of the team he supervised. "We've made a few changes around here while you were gone." The changes included a new operations center dedicated to biological and chemical threats, more advanced detection equipment, and a direct communication protocol with the newly formed counterterrorism unit. Mark and Rex were no longer just routine security. They were recognized as pioneers on a new frontier of public protection. As they completed their first circuit of the international terminal, a subtle alert from Rex drew Mark's attention to a passenger with an aluminum camera case. It was nothing dramatic, just the slight shift in posture that Mark had learned to read like a language unique to their partnership. The case turned out to contain nothing more troubling than undeclared exotic spices, but the moment reinforced what Mark had come to understand on a profound level. That ordinary vigilance, maintained day in and day out by those equipped to see what others might miss, was its own kind of heroism. As they continued their patrol, Mark realized that he and Rex had found not just their purpose, but their home. Not in the high-stakes operations of the past weeks, but in the quiet, consistent work of standing guard at the threshold between the everyday world and the extraordinary threats that sought to cross it. "Good boy, partner," Mark murmured, giving a light tug on Rex's lead as they passed a family whose excited children were pointing at the dog. For a moment, He reflected on all they had faced and discovered: the biotech secrets, Rex's special origins, the dangers they had dismantled. But as he watched the children smile with delight at his partner, Mark smiled at the simplicity of it. To the world, they were just an officer and his service dog, doing their job. And maybe, Mark thought, as they moved on to their next routine sweep, that was the beauty of it. The world would never know how close it had come to disaster, or how one ordinary dog, with a few extraordinary traits, had made all the difference. Rex didn't need accolades or medals. He had his work, his routine, and most importantly, he had his partner. Everything else, the genetic mysteries, the international conspiracies, the future of technologies that could reshape the very nature of cognition, could wait for another day. For now, there was only the comforting familiarity of the airport terminal, the steady rhythm of travelers, and the partnership between a man and his dog. A deceptively ordinary pair, standing guard against dangers most could never imagine, with a vigilance most would never notice. And for Mark Daniels, as he watched Rex pad faithfully by his side, this felt exactly as it should be.